It took me a while to realize that, of course, it is very important to take feedback and to listen, and especially to customers, but also to potential investors and other advisors. All of that is really important, but not every piece of advice that you get is worth equal weight or makes sense for your business.
Thanks for being a guest on the show today. So as I talk with entrepreneurs and small business owners, in my day job, I always talk business, and we always are focused on the business. And so with this podcast, it's more about that entrepreneurial journey and the small business ownership and all the highs and lows and the valleys and all that. So that's where we're going to go today. But what I would like for you to do is just take a few minutes to talk about who you are and what business that you're in, and then we're going to dig from there. How about that?
Sounds good.
Okay. All right. So you're what part of the world are you in?
Yeah, so I am in Bentonville, Arkansas.
Okay.
Excuse me. Bentonville, Arkansas, here in Northwest Arkansas. I am a co-founder and the COO of a company called Freight Relay. Excuse me, a little tickle in my throat. So Freight Relay is a early stage tech startup that is going to be revolutionizing the trucking industry with a software system to transform long haul trucking into a modern day Pony Express. So our patented tech reclaims a lot of the capacity that's wasted in freight trucking today, takes that back from existing resources and creates 4 really game-changing benefits that help shipper, trucking company, truck drivers, and also the environment.
Wow. Okay. All right. I'm going to dig into that a little bit because I actually have a friend of mine that works in logistics. So I've got a little bit of knowledge on how to ask some good questions around trucking and shipping and logistics. So we're going to get there in a minute. Before we get to the business, let's talk about you. What's your path? Entrepreneurship, it's not like kids usually wake up. Like me, I started mowing grass when I was a kid. So for you, how did your entrepreneurial journey start? Where was it? How old were you?
Sorry to interrupt. Yes.
Oh, that's all right.
My path, I definitely was not a kid who was thinking about business or entrepreneurship growing up, or even as a young adult. I actually was, so I was into more of the social sciences. When I was a kid, I was thinking, I think most of my teachers and family members thought that I would either grow up to be a nurse, a teacher, or a social worker. And I did. I ended up studying sociology for my undergraduate with a minor in Asian studies, and then went into worked in the nonprofit sector for quite some time, and then went back and got my master's of social work with a focus on leadership for organizational development. So I worked with lots of populations, from folks with disabilities to workforce development, and people going through recovery, children who were either living in children's homes or here in the US in the foster care system. And then eventually ended up kind of my more recent nonprofit work was in anti-oppression, social justice, philanthropy, leadership development programs for young adults and then later adults of all ages. So I did not see myself as a business person, and but I was always a person who was very interested in social impact. And so when my life/business partner, Ayush, when we were in a transition period, we moved from Denver, Colorado, where I'm primarily from, to Nashville, Tennessee. I was in this transition period and looking for what my next step was going to be. And he handed me a book called by a sociologist named Steve Viselli. and it was called The Big Rig, Trucking and the Decline of the American Dream. It was all about the harsh working conditions of long haul truck drivers. And Ayush gave me this book because he had this idea for a way of doing long haul trucking that would a way of implementing sort of a relay into long haul trucking that would be more profitable for businesses and more efficient for the industry, but also really transform truck drivers' lives. So he's a very smart guy. He handed me this book because he knew that he knew about what drove me, and that social addressing social issues was going to be of interest to me. And he was looking for a partner that he could work with to help him get his business off the ground. So I didn't see myself as a business person. I didn't see myself as a trucking, my domain expertise was not trucking and technology, creating technology. But that was that social impact. And then also my experience in operations, running pilot programs, working with teams, developing teams was into my domain expertise. And that was the spark that led me to that entrepreneurial leap.
Wow. I don't know what I was expecting to hear, but it was not that. That's actually fascinating. When I interview people and I've done 23, I think, of these so far. When I interview them, it's always a lot of logical planning to get to it. And it was for you, but it didn't start out that way. That's a big why you're doing that, passion behind what you're doing. That's impactful. All right. So let's talk about all right, you read the book, you're now inspired. You're putting the pieces together. So how did those pieces fall for you? Was it in a chronological order? Walk me through that path of, okay, I've read this book and oh my gosh, I'm inspired. What next?
Yeah, so at that early stage, we were looking at Ayush had already filed a patent on the system of using technology to create scalable relay and trucking. And he had done a lot of talking with his buddies from tech and freight and whatnot areas.
Yeah.
He had been working in as a civil engineer and in transportation engineering, had worked in the private sector, and then also for the Tennessee Department of Transportation as a freight planner, and begun talking with trucking companies. I started getting more involved at that point, also talking with trucking companies. But we were really at a stage where we wanted to develop a prototype. We got our first kind of angel funding and realized at that point that this is our opportunity to hire some folks to do some development. And we tried contracting it out 3 times, 3 different entities, and we're not getting what we needed. And every time it was like, they'd come in thinking it was going to be a certain price, and then they do a little bit and they're, oh, this is going to cost 3 times as much. So Ayush is my partner and husband, is from India, and his buddies back home were saying, hey, you're having trouble with us. Why don't you just come home, start a software company here, and with the small pot of money that you have right now, you'll have a full dedicated team going towards that and be able to make more headway. So we packed up our stuff into a storage unit in Nashville at that time. We moved to India thinking we're going to move there for a year to develop this product. And we started up a company, hired a couple of developers, and were, working 7 days a week there. And things were going well, but actually about 4 or 5 months in, we had applied to an Accelerator startup program in Memphis, Tennessee, through the Epicenter through Epicenter, which had a logistics vertical in a startup accelerator program. We got into that, and it had a little bit of VC funding come with it. And so after 5 months in India, we packed up again, continued working with our team remotely there, and then moved to Memphis. And did this 100-day boot camp, got this funding, and had been working on not only the early product development, but then also doing further customer discovery and market research, and getting kind of our first fundamentals in the how-to of starting up a business from this accelerator program. A year and a half later, actually, when we moved, I was very early pregnant when we moved to Memphis, did our demo day pitch on stage pregnant, and then gave birth to our daughter, and who is now 5 years old. But after about a year and a half in Memphis, it seemed like a great place to be, a lot of logistics going on there, but a lot of it is very intermodal focused. So we made some connections during that time through we met somebody from Bentonville, Edwin Ortiz of Rejoicey, was at a startup competition that we were at that time. And he said, hey, you know what? Have you heard of Bentonville, which is where he was living and working and had started up his company? And he said, there is a AI ML accelerator program in Bentonville that you should look at. And Bentonville also, we were clueless at the time, but didn't realize that Northwest Arkansas is headquarters to Walmart, Tyson, JB Hunt, ArcBest, Watco Logistics. It's such a logistics hub. So we applied to that program, got in, packed up our stuff into a storage unit again, and decided that if Bentonville seemed like the right place to be after we finished this program, we would relocate our headquarters here. 6 weeks into the program, the pandemic hit and everything went virtual. It was very exciting because we were meeting at that time before the pandemic. We were getting connections to these big corporate entities, and there was interest in piloting. But then when everything shut down and all these trucking companies went into like survival mode and trying to take care of the world's supply chain needs, everything slowed down. So I could keep going, but I feel like I should probably pause here.
No, you're good. No, I'm soaking it up like a sponge. This is great.
Yeah. So now we're in Bentonville. We, just like the rest of the world, we're trying to figure out, okay, like this isn't the path we were expecting. We're not going to be able to run a pilot as early as we thought we were going to be able to. What do we do instead? At the same time that just like everyone else, we were figuring out, okay, daycare closed. What are we going to do here? So at that time, I recalled that another startup friend who we had met at some point had recommended that we look into the Small Business Innovation Research Grant Awards through the a bunch of federal agencies offer them. And I had seen some newsletter come through from some startup support organization that said something about funds for supporting you in writing these grants. And so I thought, you know what, everything slowed down. This might be a good opportunity to look at some of this non-dilutive funding. And the more we read about it, the more we realized, yeah, that really, our friend was right. Like we are a really good candidate because we are a high risk technology in that there's a lot of change required and some paradigm shifts too. But that we are also incredibly high reward and have kind of game-changing benefits for all of the different stakeholders. So it made us a really good candidate. So we applied for Small Business Innovation Research grants in the last few years. We received 2 from the United States Department of Agriculture because they've been really interested in the potential of our technology and model to benefit rural, economically distressed rural and some tribal communities. We've received a grant from the Department of Energy. These are all research and development grants from the Department of Energy, because they've been interested in our ability to decrease emissions related to idling trucks while drivers are resting roadside. And then also the longer term ability potential of our technology and model to actually deploy green fleet renewable energy in long haul trucking, which is today limited to those short distances and regional trucking. And then we've received one, and just on the cusp of receiving the second National Science Foundation SBIR. So those have been amazing for allowing us to address milestones that we need to in order for us to get to market. In addition to some state matching grants and other state instruments from the Arkansas Economic Development Commission that have allowed us to grow. We're still a lean team, but to actually hire employees here in Arkansas. So it's been an exciting journey.
Wow. There was several things. I think we could spend an hour on each. There's lots in that. That's fantastic. Now, I want to uncover a few things. One of the things that I always like asking entrepreneurs, and you touched on it just briefly, once you made the decision to do this, right? What entrepreneurs know as those sleepless nights, like, oh my gosh, we're doing this. This is real. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit about that conversation that you had with your closest knit people around the, oh my gosh, this is real. We're doing this.
Wow. So yeah, I think I threw my family and friends all for a loop when I said I was doing this. And, and there's even myself, I was like, oh, this is a temporary thing in the very beginning. Because I did not see this is, I would have never imagined this career for myself earlier on. But it is beautiful how, the older I get and the more people I meet, you see the combination of life experiences people, use to mold where they end up is really quite amazing. But my family and friends, I don't know if they also were probably thinking, oh yeah, well, this is an interesting thing that they're doing for now. It's been 5 years now that we've been, full time on it. It is a huge risk. I did not previously. I did a lot of adventurous things as a young person, but I wouldn't have ever considered myself a risk taker, especially when it, so for family and really it was about, because it is a unique situation, and there are many other people in this boat, but for those of us who do set out on an entrepreneurial journey with our significant other, that can be, well, it's double-edged, right? It can be really helpful and supportive because you both, at least for both of us, we knew what we were getting into, or maybe not, that's not the right phrase. We knew that we were making this choice together. And we were clear in the beginning about, I thought that we should pursue this because this was a cool idea that my partner had, and that I knew that this was an opportunity that he would regret if he didn't pursue and find out if he could do it. And it might not have been in the area that I would have expected that I would have gone into, but all of that social impact made it something that I could buy into and be like, this is mine too. We had already moved away from Colorado, where all my family was before we made this leap. So that part wasn't as big of a bump, but yeah, I think it was surprising to all of my side of the family. For his family, it may not have been the direction that they would have chosen because they like that security. But but it, one of the helpful things for me actually has been listening to like podcast that I haven't done this for a while, but How I Built This, the podcast, with Guy Raz, at least at the time I was listening to it. I listened to a lot of that when we first started out. And it gave me a lot of appreciation for, one, it gave me a lot of appreciation just for businesses in general, and a respect that I don't think I had previously. I would say I had a lot of preconceived notions as a person who worked in nonprofit and was working on like helping people address like and cope with and overcome like a lot of ills that in society, and just took a lot for granted about how the business world operates. So, and probably sometimes thought, oh, well, there's some connections here between some greed and also these things. So this is really, which there may be some truth in that, and then definitely a lot of not.
Yeah. All right. So folks, I have not told her I'm going to ask this question. So this is, Deme, when we were talking before the call, I said, all right, I'm going to hear some things that are like, ooh, that's cool. Let's dig into that. This is that moment.
Okay.
So here's a theme that I'm hearing as I'm listening to you, from your background before you got into business to the moving and developing the technology and why the technology and why the company exists. The theme I hear is support. I hear that you're supporting others. I hear you support your partner. I hear you're supporting the society. I hear you're supporting truckers. Is that am I on track? Is that what I'm hearing? Is it all about support?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what makes my wheels turn. And I think it's the way I guess I believe that it's the way our whole society and world turns and operates is through support, a whole lot of supporting, whether we acknowledge it as that or not. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. And, in the, for those who've been listening, the grants, you listed off 3 or 4 or 5 different grants. She mentioned grants. You mentioned grants like it's just, I wrote a letter and they responded. It's way more than that. I know enough about grants. That is no easy feat to get one grant, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I will tell you, it has really, one big takeaway that from this whole experience is there are so many transferable skills between working in a small under-resourced nonprofit and starting up a tech company. This is my one company that I've started up. It is funny how those skills from my previous career really have equipped me for many things in this one. But I will say that when I left my last job in nonprofit, the one thing I was sure of is that I was not going to work in development in my next nonprofit, because I did not want to write grants and raise money. And so it's really funny that that today that's been a big contribution of the work that I have done to the company is working on those grants. And I have not done it alone. When we come back to that support theme, we have been so lucky to have support from the Arkansas Small Business Technology Development Center and the Science Venture Studio, Startup Junkie, these organizations, and Arkansas Apex Accelerator, these organizations that have helped us with coaching. These grants are huge and require so much work, and they are really critical for a company like ours, but are highly competitive and then just a ton of work. So I surprised myself in that something that I swore I would not do. I'm actually kind of proud that I have been doing.
Yeah. I'll never do that ever again. And here we are, right?
Yes. But wouldn't have been able to make it through without our coaches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So speaking of coaches, we all have mentors, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes they know they're our mentor because we lean on them, and sometimes not so much, right? So share a little bit about your journey with people that have been mentors. Not that you need to name names, but talk
Yeah.
about what the mentors in the past and present mean to you and your business.
Hmm. Well, I am so grateful and feel so lucky to have benefited from mentorship. I say sometimes um I don't know if you can hear. I apologize. There's a some sort of vehicle backing up. There's a
No, I
beeping
can't hear
noise.
that.
Okay,
No.
good. um, so one of the things I feel like I have it was kind of later that I feel like I got a little bit more formal, like mentor who kind of
Mhm.
continues and stays by you, or is accessible over a longer period of time. In the beginning, there were lots of folks who through different programs, advisors who'd pop in and out, or were running a program we were taking part in. And I got great tidbits from all of them. Um, uh, as I've had chance for some of the relationships to build more since we've been in Arkansas, um, it is having that seasoned person to springboard things off of, to kind of expand your vision when you're getting too
Mhm.
narrow, or thinking too narrowly about my own capabilities or competencies, um, or just needing to bounce like, oh, this feels complex, or how do we navigate this relationship and that one, or how
Yeah.
will this, this is a key part here. We want to make sure our company is not being perceived as, you know, one way or another. And I would say like those kind of key mentors who are kind of solid and continuous with us have been like from the Arkansas Small Business Technology Development Center and Science Venture Studio. And um, I in the beginning, one of the things I know people often ask you, like, well, I don't want to jump ahead in case this is one of your questions.
No, no, that's okay. You go right ahead.
I will say that one of the challenges earlier on was figuring out, learn partly because I didn't come from a business background. I had some amount of imposter syndrome, and felt like I really needed to take every piece of constructive criticism or feedback to heart and integrate it all in a business. And so while I was trying to integrate all of those things in and figure out how all those puzzle pieces fit
Yeah.
together when they conflicted with each other, um, figuring out um, how to discern that was a huge part in my own professional development.
Mm.
And then also in that, figuring out, learning to recognize when there's an advisor, somebody a potential mentor who really gets like what you're doing,
Mm.
ask the right questions, listens and challenges you. And that's something that I've really come to appreciate. Um, and of course,
Yeah.
each person is different, and we all have a different style that we're going to respond better to as well.
Yeah. Having that independent lens, the non-emotional attachment in there,
Mm-hmm,
is in my opinion, what make mentors so great,
mm-hmm.
that they tell you like it is, or they may even tell you what you need to hear, even though you don't like hearing it. It's like, ooh, la, 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 la. It's not, no. But
Yeah,
that's, yeah. And everybody that I talk to usually finds the value in their mentors, and some are better mentors in one situation and maybe not
mm-hmm.
in the next. And so having multiple, like you're talking about, is fantastic. So
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit more about, the people that you're serving.
Mhm.
how you serve them, and what does that mean as far as as an entrepreneur when you look into the future, right? And the future could be next year for some people, it could be 5 years. How is it you see s- connecting what you do with the people that you're trying to serve?
Yeah. So, great question. So, one of the things that Ayush and I both feel very strongly about as co-founders is, um, like our why. As you mentioned, like we have a really strong, I've talked about my why, but Ayush has, there's a lot of overlap there. And we, want to, so we see our business as something that what creates more profitability for businesses, and more efficiency. But the part that drives us, is that it creates more equity.
Mhm.
And there's
Yeah.
all different levels of critiques that people can have on, like,
Yeah.
how our society treats our workforce, um,
Yeah.
and where that's exploited and not.
Mhm.
But regardless, for us, it comes down to these human beings who are doing such an important critical role in our
Mhm.
society of getting the things that, majority of things in my office right now and in my home and
Mhm.
et cetera, all have moved by truck. And and so we want for truck drivers to reap the benefits, um, of reclaiming this kind of capacity. And we
Mhm.
do, a huge part of that is by transforming the work-life balance of being able to get them home to their own beds at the end
Mhm.
of each shift, so that they're not on the road for weeks at a time, that they can, whether it is, they have their own 5-year-old or a partner, or
Mhm.
they've got, friends they want to go barbecue with, or a pet, or they
Yeah.
want to take on walks, like that is, something that benefits them. And so as we've been doing, but then also we see potential for, this economic,
Mhm.
development opportunities for economically distressed communities that are on in strategic places along major trucking corridors.
Yeah.
Trucks are already moving past or through their communities.
Mm.
If we were able to harness like the energy from that and bring more economic opportunities to their community, more revenue opportunities, that could be, just so mutually beneficial.
Yeah.
So as we've been doing, moving our product along, working on testing, simulating, and then, testing, we, have wanted to make sure that we are checking in with those who would be most impacted,
Mm.
the truck drivers, trucking companies. Um, in the end, we'll see, is our truck drivers themselves actually going to be paying customers?
Mm.
Probably not. I mean, they could be, because the majority of truck, like 90% of all trucking companies are less than 6 trucks. But regardless, we want to make sure that this solution makes sense to them and to those communities in those rural areas.
Mm.
Like, is this something they would want to see in their backyard? We don't want to plunk down, like parachute down, say, hey, aren't you glad to see us? We want to make sure beforehand, and
Right.
then gather their opinions to make sure that we do it the right way, if that's the direction that it goes. So
Yeah.
I've actually was so excited, our team was excited that the Department of Energy, they had this special, topic area in their grant that was, inspired by the Justice 40, that was really looking at having those environmental, positive impacts,
Mhm.
but making sure that you're involving, folks who have been communities that have traditionally been disenfranchised in, these processes, and weighing in and being part of making decisions.
Yeah.
So with that SBIR project, we were able to do a lot of interviewing and, surveys and community engagements, to
Mm.
get direct feedback from both trucking stakeholders and non-trucking stakeholders in these rural and tribal communities, and got really positive feedback. So that was very
Yeah.
exciting.
Wow. That's fantastic. So let's take a step towards an entrepreneurship the one topic I always love. This is the fun, entertaining part. We're going to talk about misconceptions of small business
Yeah.
ownership. Yeah,
Okay.
so everybody's got their favorite misconception of small business owners. What's the one that you like to talk about?
Well, I would say, okay, so when I was before starting our own business, I just didn't realize all the things that were happening in the background. When a business is running smoothly, you don't, it's just the status quo is smooth and functioning, and you don't realize how many pieces people are juggling. And of course, it's going to be different in your
Mhm.
different whatever your business is and whatnot. But and this is really true for, in my experience, it's not just true for a small business, but for a small nonprofit organization, is that when you are running something, you have so many plates in the air and you're spinning them, and you're if you're a small business, a small team, you're gonna be same time you're spinning these things, you're taking out the trash. There's so many things going on. And when I was younger and I would get a job, I was eager to learn. I knew I wasn't going to be privy to everything that my bosses were doing. But even with all of that and having an open mind about, oh, they got, giving them the
Mhm.
benefit of the doubt, they haven't done this yet, they've got all this going
Yeah.
on. I still had no idea about half of the things that they were juggling.
Yeah.
So that's an appreciation that I feel like I want to go write thank you notes to all of the people I used to work with and being like, okay, now I know, like I have an idea of what was going on.
Yeah, what my favorite was, I can't remember who I was talking to, but they said the biggest thing was, if I had $1 for every nickel they thought I made.
Right. Oh my God, that's the biggest thing. That is huge. Yeah, because you're like, well, actually, like for the majority of the time that I've been working, I haven't had any salary and my savings has been going into, yeah. So that is another big one is yeah, but of course, you don't know
Yeah.
until you know and you're
Yeah.
there and you're like, well, I guess yeah, you just you got to pay the developers, and so you don't pay yourself, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah,
the other one that I see a lot of, I witness. I don't make a big deal out of it when I do find it, but
mm-hmm,
there's a constant push. As soon as you let off the
mm-hmm,
gas, it doesn't
mm-hmm,
roll to a stop. It'll come crashing
yeah,
to a stop. And that's
yeah,
the other misconception I see is people don't appreciate that pedal is hard to keep pressed down all the
mm-hmm,
time. And how do you do that? How do you implement and how do you build the team?
yeah, yeah. That is so true, and that's another thing. Just the amount of time. I think that's another thing when you're running things is the amount of time that it takes to find and retain your team and train is so much bigger than you would imagine, or then you imagine until you're actually doing it, and understanding such an important investment, and also yeah, it can just easy to
Yeah.
underestimate. um but then yeah, that piece about pushing and things coming to a standstill, and in our first when we first did our 100-day boot camp in Memphis, uh that was, they're like, keep going, don't stop, blah blah blah. And then after the 100 days, I thought I was still supposed to be doing that, but and you do in a way, but you also we had
Mm,
to learn what does it look like when we're keeping the momentum and we're keeping going, but also like what does something sustainable look like,
mhm.
where you keep yourself moving forward, but you're also figuring out how to balance life, because if you don't, then nothing's going to work.
Yeah. Yeah. So as a business coach, one of the things that I have to force my clients to do is to stop and reassess.
Mm,
They don't know how to stop and reassess. It's
hmm
always, we got to make the cakes. We got to make the cakes, you got to just keep production. It's all about moving forward. And I'm like, we need to stop and reassess. So getting that, once they learn how to stop and reassess, and when I say stop
Mhm.
and reassess, I'm not talking about shut the door, turn off the light. I'm not talking about that. It's
Yeah.
how to regroup. And a lot of small business owners, they don't know how to stop. They don't know how
Hmm.
to plan for that reassessment so that, okay, are we off course, and
Hmm.
evaluate that off course. And that's another misconception that I'll run into, is it's that plow ahead. We're always on offense, like, no,
Yeah.
not
Yeah. Yeah.
always.
You got to be strategic. You're
Yeah.
gonna just be spinning your wheels.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Last question. All right.
Hmm.
If you could write a letter to yourself, say 6 or 7, 8, let's say when you read that book, you're writing
Uh-huh.
a letter to that person now on that day. What would you tell that person after you got through reading that book?
Oh gosh, let's see. I think I would tell her, um, I
I'm
think
sorry.
no, it's a good one. It's a good question. I think it's something along the lines of um asking her to keep her mind open to to uh let her know that she's starting a journey that's gonna have some twists and turns, but it's gonna be overall it's gonna be an exciting adventure, and to have patience with herself and with her partner,
Good one.
um to invest some time in working on communication skills, and also that while she might not know everything she thinks she needs to know just yet, she's gonna, her track record shows us that she's invested in learning, and that she's gonna do that, and that once as she's gathering that knowledge, that she can start trusting herself more and more, that she's, you know, that she is that she does deserve to be there, and that she should be there.
Wow. I didn't expect that good of an answer. That was great. That was good. Yeah. And I especially like the patience part,
Mm,
having patience with yourself, showing yourself some grace. That's fantastic.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being on the show. They're always interesting, but this has been especially interesting. And I
Yeah.
appreciate you coming on the show today.
Thank you, Alan. I so appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. So if people want to find you and your business, how do they find you?
Right now, the best place is LinkedIn. So Freight Relay, are there show notes that we can plug that into, or you
Uh,
can
I don't,
email also?
yes,
Okay,
yes.
so
Yeah.
email is another great one. Email us at
Okay.
hello@freightrelay.com. Now that is freight is spelled F8 as in the number 8. Oh no, excuse me. I'm misspelling our own company name. That's F as in Frank, um, R is in relay, 8, and then RELAY.com. Freight
So,
Relay.
so 8 is the number 8, correct?
It is
Okay.
correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So hello@freightrelay.com.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you,
All
Alan.
right.
Have a great day.
You too.